It'd be very easy not to do this. Day like today, one would be forgiven for driving straight past, and we'll do that another day, or we'll have a look at that on the way home. But all too often that doesn't happen. I've got to just get out there and do it now. It's a bit fresh. It said 4.5 degrees at the car. McNamaras Hut. That's a big hut. I think there's a door at the other end too. Window. It is quite big, isn't it? Fireplace. McNamara name is synonymous with the Bogong High Plains, dating back to the 1850s. Ronnie, Mick and Jack McNamara built a hut on this site in about the 1940s with Bill Toland, and the intention was to have a base for their cattle grazing on the Buckety Plain Run. And that hut stood, albeit in disrepair, till about 1970s, and yeah, got a bit knocked around. So there's an outdoor camp not far from here, Mittagundy Outdoor Centre, and they run a program up through this country. This was a pretty important spot for their program, so they took on the custodianship of the hut. So they used the site as an opportunity to repair the hut, maintain it, and that hut endured until about 2003, when the big fires come through here, the Alpine fires, and burnt the hut down, which has happened to so many of the huts in this country. So in 2004, Mittagundy and a lot of other volunteers took on a program to rebuild the hut, and that's what we can see here today. And clearly it's still well maintained, no doubt, by Mittagundy and those said volunteers. So hats off to all those that are still slogging away and keeping the place maintained. It's awesome, appreciate it. There's the door handle. Silver spoon. Wow. This doesn't look that old. McNamaras Hut. There's another room out the back here. Must be a wood box. There's another one behind you.
There's a saw in there.
It's bleeding. I'm sure it'll be a welcome fireplace on a stormy winter's day, or probably more so stormy winter's night. Solid rock mortared in. Corrugated iron above. Chimney. Well, they've actually done a good job there. Wooden floor, windows, very innovative in the loft, or up above head height is a chicken wire. It'd be good for putting your gloves and socks and probably your boots and your wet gear in there. Let the heat rise up through it, dry it out. See between the logs all the chinking, possibly different eras of it. You've got the original version, which looks like clay, chink there, and then possibly at a later time the chinking consists of, no doubt, clay behind it, but lamb's wool. It's actually done a pretty good job too, just looking around. There's very few spots where you can see daylight between the logs. And the roof is lined with hessian, and then there's a few of these skylights as well. A bit modern era, polycarb skylights. they've done a great job, and it's a solid hut. This should endure for a long time, providing it doesn't get burnt down. This is an awesome setting if you're looking for a bit of a refuge. Quite sheltered in here. You're in a bit of a bowl, surrounded right around. The fireplace and the typical park sort of infrastructure out the front there. Probably looks like there's a bit of water out the back there. Dunny over the back. I'd recommend it. Good spot. Got to walk in. It's only about 250 metre walk from the car. Put it on your buckety plane list. So it's important to us to actually stop and have a look at all these places. And you stumble across spots like this. Now, hats off to Parks Victoria in this case. They've gone a lot of effort to maintain a site. So this is Buckety Plain campsite. And, you know, although the infrastructure is pretty basic, table, fireplace, dunny. This is the first day, second day after a long weekend, probably the most popular long weekend of the year. And it's still clean, so that's credit to those that no doubt were using it over that long weekend. We're at over 1,600 metres above sea level here, so that's getting up there for Victoria in terms of vehicle access, good facilities. There's no shortage of firewood around, and no doubt we'll want to crack a fire tonight. It's about 4 degrees at the moment. Obviously we're sitting in the cloud. But anyway, we've just pulled up, a bit of smoko, and we'll have a cuppa, and we're going to wander in here. This is about 700 metres into Faithful's hut. We'll have a look at that. Haven't been in there before, so a bit of new territory. That's always great. From there, the plan is to keep wandering up a bit higher. It's obviously not the day for scenic vistas from high points, but it is the day walking in these conditions, being out. There's no wind, not a breath of wind. And what we'll probably do is we'll poke around up high a bit, have a look at a few of the sites. There's a few more huts that we're going to check out, and then we'll probably come back to somewhere like here, a bit protected, sheltered, camp the night, and tomorrow's another day. Bit of a decline. This will be interesting coming back up here. Put us to the test. There's an old pole here, snow pole, I suspect. Got to remember that when they first started bringing cattle and themselves up into this high country, there was no roads. There's snow poles throughout the high country to define the routes, and the reason being is because obviously once there's, you know, multiple feet of snow on the ground, this is pre-vehicle tracks of course, it'd be a little bit ill-defined. We'll see a lot more of these poles throughout our walks, but this is an interesting one because I'm looking at it thinking, is this a deer rub? It's got a lot of rubbing going on one side of the pole here. And I'm wondering if it's actually deer. You know, rattling their antlers on it. Up to here, there's certainly quite defined lines on it. Yeah, I'm going with that. I'm gonna say that's deer. There's the old snow gum. Bloody rippers. Got a deck. Wow, it's home away from home, this one, isn't it? This is bordering on salubrious. Ooh. Unfortunately, I haven't got a video light to show the inside. It's quite dark in here despite multiple windows. It'll still get very cold at night because there's actually no lining. It's just the tin walls and tin ceiling. There's actually two parts to it. So this is the main hut with the fireplace over there. We'll see if we can have a look at that with our limited light, but I've just observed it's pretty amazing. A lot of work going into the fireplace over there. Oh. There's a little bit of a bench down here, very low, but probably gets you closer to the fire. A fair bit of effort going to this fireplace. It's probably very hard to see in this light, but well constructed. It's a real big, good, solid backing plate there. That's 12mm thick steel. That would have weighed a tonne getting that in here. Railway iron in the base to support and hold the logs from rolling out of the fire. Some swinger-ways. That's actually that's solid. That's not pipe, that's actually solid. That's an old bloody drill, rock drill there. Bent, forged, a lot of work gone into that. This is pretty salubrious. The Faithfuls first mustered Brumbies up on the high country, up on the high plains over near Rocky Valley. And it wasn't until the 1920s that they first brought cattle up here, or thereabouts, 1920-ish. At that time they were using Wallaces Hut, first mustering Brumbies and then running cattle into the 1950s. So this particular hut reputedly was built in about 1962 by the Faithfuls and Percy Higgins. And there's a couple of interesting features with this hut. It's got a high gable roof. It's unlined, clad, corrugated iron clad, but the iron's running horizontally. And from what I can see, this is the original hut here, inclusive of this veranda, and possibly this annex and the back annex has been added at a later date. It's got an awesome fireplace, a steel lined, quite heavy gauge steel plate lined fireplace. It's actually got some swingaways and everything there for hanging your pots and everything on. This would have been really cosy. In saying that, it was probably also like a fridge because there's no lining at all in either the roof or the walls. And the floor is elevated, it's built on stump. So it's not all that old in comparison to other high country huts, which could explain its good condition and the architecture of it. But clearly well maintained. I'm impressed. There's different eras of construction and clearly been built with bits and pieces that have been begged, borrowed and stolen from other buildings, no doubt. So the old 5-panel louver windows in the original hut, but this annex on the back's got these sash windows, 2-panel sash windows. I don't think you'd want to open them, be playing around with them too much. Yeah, no, I don't think I'll touch it, but yeah, it's in good nick. Even little features like down the bottom here to stop the end grain, water getting into the end grain of the split log bearers. They've even got metal flashing over them to stop the moisture. There's no doubt the snow builds up around the hut here and that end grain would be susceptible to water moisture ingress. So they've even flashed that. It's incredible. A lot of effort. And it stands in a great location here. There's a little creek literally 10 metres from the hut, not even that. And a couple of these big old snow gums. So this is Cope Hut. In its day, it was the only hut in the high country that was actually built solely for tourism. A lot of huts around here had other origins, primarily cattle grazing. Grazing families built huts for their accommodation while they were undertaking their duties, tending to their stock. It was about 1929 this hut was built after a submission to the Victorian Tourist Board thereabouts, by Wilkinson of infamy, Wilkinson's Lodge, a bit further down the way, suggested that there was a need for dedicated accommodation for ski tourers, obviously in the winter. Wallace's Hut was starting to get a little bit in disrepair, so the need for dedicated accommodation for skiers to be able to get out of the inclement weather when it was such. So anyway, they built Cope Hut, and it's quite different to most of the other building types, quite dedicated architecture, quite focused on the end task. By all accounts, Spargo, who was one of the CRB workers from over at Hotham Way, he supervised the building of the hut. All the materials were carted in from down off from Shannonvale, down from Faithfuls that were down in Shannonvale. It's currently occupied by a group, so they've just come in using the hut for its intended purpose, which was getting out of the elements. They've been walking for 3 or 4 days and time to seek a bit of shelter. It's got a couple of mezzanine floors and bunks for about another 8 people. Obviously, like any of these huts, it's still preferred. They're emergency use only, so if you can put your tent up and there's a campsite out the back, that's certainly the preferred option. But when the weather is inclement and you really need to take shelter, then these do afford that opportunity. There is a fairly new looking steel firebox being inserted into the chimney in there. It's small but no doubt effective. In its day, by all accounts, it had hot and cold running water. That's certainly not the case now. There is an account from years ago. The SEC workers, some of them were based here doing the weather readings when the construction days of the hydro. One of the tales is of one of the workers coming in at 5 o'clock at night, and the only way he was able to get warm in that hut was to actually go and get into bed, because didn't matter what he did, the hut was just frigid cold, and he couldn't warm it up. So 5 o'clock at night, the only way to keep warm, get in bed. And that's probably not much different to today. It's just a tin-clad hut, no insulation. They serve a purpose, but they're certainly not going to be anything overly opulent. This is Wallace's Hut, built in about 1889 by the Wallace brothers, Arthur, William and Stuart, and it's believed to be certainly the oldest hut in the Bogong High Plains, probably one of the older huts left anywhere in the high country now, 1889. So it was built by slabbing up the snow gum and the woolly butt snow gum for the split logs around the side, and then the woolly butt would have been used to make shingles for the roof. In more recent times, it's had the tin roof put over it, over the shingles. Originally, it was a shingle roof, and no doubt that suffered the wrath of the weather. Wallace's Hut, let's go in and have a look. The hut's very much now almost a museum piece rather than a practical, usable space. No doubt you could still take refuge in here. The fireplace is barricaded off, the mesh, look but don't touch sort of thing, and probably understandably so. A wayward ember could get in here easily. It's a split log floor and no doubt well seasoned, so it wouldn't take much for an ember to come out when somebody wasn't paying much attention, start smouldering away and ultimately get into the building itself. It wouldn't take much, all these old timbers, they'd be just bone dry. So yeah, it's almost a museum piece now, isn't it? Yeah, we've got to look after them because, it is in a fragile state and it wouldn't take much for it to become rack and ruin. Wallace's Hut. Certainly the centrepiece of many photo adorning people's walls, paintings. Plenty of prominent artists and photographers have used it as a prop for their photography and subject of their easel. Imagine the stories that this hut could tell. And of course, people have decided to carve their name into the beams and write all over it. Anyway, we'll write our name in the book because that's what we can do. That's where we can leave our mark, tell our tale in the logbook. Yes, this would have been a bit of a storeroom. Keep your saddlery and all your tack in here, and maybe a bit of dry firewood too, I suppose. But you know, look at the size of some of the slabs on the floor. You know, woolly butt slabs been laid along the floor. Keep it out of the dirt. You need to be short though, otherwise you'd scone yourself on that bloody rafter pretty regularly, I reckon. Some of this rubbish. I reckon we look at heading down a bit of low country and getting a fire going. Dry out, eh? Righto. That was a good little walk to Wallaces Hut. I think it's about 400 metres each way. Quite a defined track. Probably in all abilities to a certain extent. Pretty easy going really, but as you feel on top of the world up here. I don't know, we're a bit over 1700 metres and the clouds just sitting there just above us. We're getting wet, but we wouldn't have to go much higher and I think we'd be getting soaked. Well, the family's probably wanting to get into the car. Here I am, gas bagging. There you go. So our plan is to head back down, drop down off the mountain a little bit, probably back to where we had lunch, down towards Buckety Plain. It's a great day to be out here. You can really see on days like this, and this is not a bad day. It gets a lot worse than this, but you can see the value in these huts. You can see when they come into their own. You can see why they're here and see why we've got to look after them and preserve them. Wouldn't take much more for the conditions to deteriorate and we'd be looking for those huts. This is awesome. There you go. The lad got a bit of wood. Got the fire going. Mum's put the belly on. Got the tent set up. The lad's putting his swag up. And the rain stopped for now. We've sort of dropped down here out of the cloud. I reckon if we're a bit higher, yeah, don't have to look far out there. We'd be getting a wet butt. So, no wind. Another night here and then see what the weather's doing tomorrow and possibly head off with our packs and do a couple of nighter. Visit a few more huts that are a little bit more off the beaten track. I think we got lumpy water. Oh yeah. Oh, how good are those things, eh? They make it easy. Oh, this is going to be a good brew. The fog's just started settling on us. How good a spot's this though, eh? This is a cracker. Got the place to ourselves too. So we've gone with the deluxe version tonight. Because of the weather, put the full awning up. Lucky we weren't having our pitching competition tonight. It took a little bit longer putting the whole setup up with the awning. The lad has tucked his swag in there under the back, under the veranda. But yeah, when we got the awning set up, it takes quite a bit longer to pack down as well. But anyway, so you have your rapid pitch system, and then you've got your what is it? And then you've got your not rapid pitch system, according to the lad. Anyway, makes a big difference. I don't think we'll put them up tonight, but we've built some walls. Previously we've used tarps and things, so we've actually built some walls. Might see that in another video. The inclement weather continued, and unbeknown to us at the time, it was playing havoc with our audio equipment. Anyway, That's all part of the adventure, and we didn't know it at the time, so it wasn't bothering us. Stowing the last few bits and pieces into our packs, we polished off a cup of tea and a biscuit, and then battened down our hatches before we hit the track. Little did we know it because of the visibility, but our first hut was only metres away. And try and find a track in a country we're not overly familiar with. Spent a fair bit of time here years ago in the snow, but it's quite different then, and also quite a long time ago. So anyway, we're looking forward to it. With this weather and this cloud, we're going to try and find out which way to go. Might be easier said than done. What are we? Not far from the truck. Barely see it in the background there. Anyway, not sure it's going to be the walk for the views this time. G'day there. This is Lagford Gap Hut. This was built during the days of establishment of the hydro system, and they're putting all these aqueducts in and all the engineering and surveying in advance and the weather monitoring, and there was SEC days, the days of the State Electricity Commission. People were stationed up here with different tasks. People would have been positioned here to monitor and log the weather. So this one is just a little wood heater there. There's probably something else in its day. Quite breezy. There's plenty of gaps in the floor. Looks like it's had power. There's a light fitting in the ceiling there. Probably had the bare essentials, but enough to get by. Nothing more, nothing less. The aqueduct's just out the front here.
Do the job on a cold winter's night.
The whole aqueduct system, inclusive of all these storage dams, it's all about getting the water from one side of the hill to the other. So all the drainage that would normally flow, I guess, off to the south and into the midder catchment, ultimately is being rediverted around to the other side of the mountain and getting stored in Rocky Valley storage. So then they can use that for their hydro power generation. So my understanding of that process is any water that comes out of Rocky Valley ultimately will end up in the Kiewa River, I think it is, leading then to the Murray River, which, as we know, flows out to the ocean in South Australia. Walking along these aqueducts was actually pretty easy going. It was obviously fairly flat, barely any incline or decline. Little did we know at the time, but our return journey in a couple of days' time along this very path would turn out to be a fair slog.
There you go.
Lucky you didn't let that go then. Eucalyptus pauciflora, otherwise known as the snow gum. This would have to be one of the best specimens of such a tree going around. This was absolutely mind-blowing. It would have had to been pushing 3 metres across the base, this tree. It was clear that the surrounding forest had been impacted by fire historically, possibly not too long ago, but for some reason, possibly because of intervention, this tree had stood the test of time and not been impacted by fire.
Substantial growth. It's only a walking track or MVO these days.
very open, barely a tree. In fact, I'll go so far to say that there's not a tree to be seen from here. I'm going to just duck off the main drag down into Edmonson's hut. Put the nose bag on. I might even have half a cup. See how we go. So, no, we're walking well. So, one thing to have these cool, inclement conditions, but it's actually makes for fairly easy walking. It was about the 1st of March 1960, I think. Jim Edmonston spent the first night in his hut here. He'd been camping in this very site for quite a few years after establishing his agricultural business in the late 40s and mustering up into this high country in the 50s. And he used to regularly camp here, and then decided it was time to build a hut. So he had the services of Dunn, I think it was, might have been Jim Dunn, built the hut for Edmondson and Edmonson. But what the importance of this hut, obviously it had a history of agriculture and mustering on the high country, but Edmonston in his wisdom knew that there was much greater value for the hut, particularly education. Obviously the cattle industry was coming to a close up here in the high country. There's a great hut here, so Edmondson donated it to the Bogong School, and they've been managing it, by all accounts, no doubt these days in collaboration with Parks Victoria, ever since. It's a great hut, a great refuge, and it's certainly kept in good nick. But there's something I want to show you. I just observed something in there. Well, it's a bit concerning because there's a history of these huts being burnt down accidentally, and I can see why. That log there has been burnt, it's been in the fire, the end of it's burnt, and the log is hanging out on a wooden floor. Fire, log, tinder dry wooden floor. Wouldn't take much for that to catch on fire. That log doesn't look like it's been doused with water. That fire doesn't look like it's been doused with water, so it's been left, I suspect. Nothing stopping that fire travelling down that log onto the floor. Once that fire's travelled all the way along that log onto the floor, goodbye hut. We've got to make sure that doesn't happen. Annex on the side for wood storage and everything. There's actually a little, almost like a secret door between the annex and inside next to the fireplace. Don't have to come out into the snow to get your wood. Just thought went into that one, I think. Roper's Hut. And I reckon this is one of the best settings for a hut that I've come across. This is absolutely fantastic, this site. There's plenty of options for camping. Some awesome trees. Snow gum. Got to try and find some water. This is a fantastic spot here. And I reckon this is going to do us for the night. There's a few others taking up residence in the hut. So we might just go in and take a bit of refuge later on. But whew, that was a fair slog. Fair slog indeed. So it was about 14 kilometres today, which is about 15 k's more than we'd prepared for. So get the belly on, I think. It was a good day. The clouds just starting to lift. We're just starting to get glimpses of the Mount Bogong Massif teasing us, really. So anyway, we'll get ourselves settled in and we'll have a look around. It's a bit fresh out here this morning. There's a layer of ice over the tents, and we've got something a bit different today than what we've had in the last few days. The sun's actually coming up out the back here. We've got huge views. Wow, quite different. The difference a sleep can make, eh?
Hey, Marty.
Have a cup, cook up some oats, shake up some of this sun. Not sure if we can hear that. Dingo. Wolf. It's a fair way away. Well, we might see him. It's out the way we're walking. Frederick Roper was running cattle on the Bogong High Plains for quite a few years, way back 1890s or thereabouts. I think it was about 1908 or thereabouts. They took up formally a grazing license on the High Plains. This hut here replaced, well, this hut's actually post 2003 fires incarnation. Prior to that there was a hut here which had replaced a couple of other huts, one down on Roper's Falls. The former hut on this site being burnt down, it had a fair bit of work undertaken by the Freemasons, the Northeast Freemasons. Done a fair bit of restoration work, but yeah, in 2003 it succumbed to the fires, as did many other huts. They estimated about 25% of the high country huts got destroyed in the 2003 fires, and this one subsequently was rebuilt, and this is a fine hut. This is brilliant. Only accessible on foot. Well, you probably ride your horse, I suppose. It's brilliant. It's well insulated. I think it's double lined tin from what we can gather. I suspect there's a bit of insulation in between those two layers of corrugated iron. A great chimney, fireplace with a solid steel firebox in there, which, as we found out last night, keeps the whole hut toasty warm. There's no drafts whatsoever in this hut. We cooked our dinner in here. There was another couple camped in there, and they had the fire going, so we sort of joined them for a bit of company and rode on their good will. So thanks very much. It's not a particularly big hut. It's got a couple of sleeping platforms, but like all of these huts, they're for emergency use only. We put our tents up. Oh, it was an awesome campsite actually up the back here. Turned a bit frosty overnight. It had been blowing in the wind, the rain. Woke up this morning and the tent was actually iced over. All those raindrops was frozen solid. Over there, over my shoulder, you can see the summit of Mount Bogong, Victoria's highest peak, in all its splendour. There's actually not a cloud in the sky today, so complete contrast to yesterday and the day before. This is perfect. This is why we come to the high country. Put up with a little bit of hardship for the rewards like this. Oh, well, thanks for having us, Roper's Hut. The pleasure was all ours. Although we had a great vista opening in front of us, we had to stop every now and again and turn around and take in that awesome view behind us. The fog was lifting out of the valley of the big river and Mount Bogong Massif in the background. It was just awe-inspiring. The cloud coming up out of the valley, just starting to block out the view of Bogong. It's amazing. 24 hours difference. We couldn't see a thing yesterday when we come through here, and today we can see forever. Filling our canteen from this tiny mountain stream that's origins are only metres away. As it emerges out of the mountain, we're reminded once again just how fortunate we are to be able to drink this pristine water. Buffalo, Bogong, Nelson.
Third highest peak. Doesn't have a name.
Speed on cop running out through here. And this peak about there is actually an unnamed peak at the third highest peak in Victoria. Summit. Woo. The summit of Mount Nels. Massif is just holding the cloud back there. 1882 metres above sea level. Woohoo! It's one of the highest in Victoria. 4th, 5th, 6th, not sure exactly. Mount Nels North is just over that way. It's 2 metres higher. So that would make it 1884. I just pulled up at Johnstons Hut for lunch. And not before time either. We've had a bit of a blowout in the feet department, so we're going to do a bit of surgery, see what we can come up with. Otherwise it's a long crawl home. This is Johnston's Hut, just off the back of Mount Nels. And it's actually a private hut, although there's this small refuge off to the side here that's left unlocked for those that need to seek shelter in the case of emergency. But that's all bloody locked up like Fort Knox. Probably had their fair share of vandalism over the years, and they've gone to a fair bit of effort to keep people out of where they don't want people to get into. It would appear the hut's been well appointed, has gas and what looks like reticulated water. No shortage of firewood stored there for the winter time. Contact details listed on the door as the Tallymark Ski Club of East Gippsland. Having grazed cattle on the high plains since the 1890s, Patrick Kelly eventually built a hut on this site in about 1901. The site was reputedly the site of a previous hut built by Kieran Marham and Jack Platt in about 1891. The 1901 hut, built by Kelly, featured vertical slab walls, gabled paling roof and a chimney attached at one end. This hut burnt down in about 1956 and was replaced by a former SEC V hut that was moved from its Rocky Valley site in about 1958 by Pat and Kevin Kelly. Possibly because of its close proximity to nearby Fitzgeralds Hut, the hut doesn't appear to be getting a great deal of maintenance. However, like any of these huts, would certainly be a welcome refuge when conditions are trying. Walked in this way, Kelly's hut, Fitzgerald's hut. And the reality is, if we didn't go and have a look at Kelly's hut now, the way we feel, I feel, probably wouldn't have. Oh, fair shagged. Fair shagged. I think one of the things that keeps you going though, particularly on a day like today when it is bloody magnificent, is the views. Just out there, Mount Bogong, sitting up there in all its glory. Oh, it's just magnificent. Magnificent. Hut number 10 on our odyssey of 10 high country huts. What's it? 1, 2, 3 days today. We've seen 10 high country huts. All of them are walk-ins. Yep, you can't drive to any of these that we've been to. Certainly appreciate these high country huts after days like this when you're fair worn out. Get out of the wind, just take the chill off the air, just a little fire. We've still got our tents up the back there, and we'll snuggle into them, so like crawling into a cocoon. This is Fitzgeralds Hut, and there's a fair story with Fitzgeralds, and there's quite a plaque there. Yeah, we'll have a bit of a chat about it, a bit of a look around tomorrow, but in the meantime we'll just we're just gonna chillax, rest the weary bones. The original Fitzgeralds hut was built in about 1903 by George Fitzgerald, using palings and shingles split from the woollybutt forest below. Everything was hauled up to the site using pack horses. It was a tiny hut and became the base for the Fitzgerald family's High Plains grazing run. Throughout the years, the hut was shared with more and more walkers, ski tours and horse riding parties. As visitor numbers to the area increased, it became a well-known and loved landmark, and it stood nestled in the snow gum forest on the edge of the plains.
Pretty good. Very good.
Not need our coats on today, I think. Keep that wind out. I'd be surprised if we get a bit of rain. Tragically, the hut was accidentally burnt down by a school group in 1991. Wallangarra Youth Group near Lacola rebuilt the hut in March 1993, supported by the Fitzgeralds family and people from Hayfield and Glen Valley, as well as the Melbourne school responsible for the fire and national parks. Let's hope that this current hut that was built to a similar size and style, mostly using recycled materials, will last as long and serve as well as its predecessor. It's important that we look after the huts by cleaning up after ourselves, replacing firewood, take away all our rubbish, and importantly, keep our fires small and safe. So that was hut number 10 of our 10 hut sojourn. It's been a great little adventure actually. It's interesting sitting at home how easy it is to map all this stuff out and think, yeah, we'll just whip around there, we'll do that. But the reality is it's a lot harder. The body's not keeping up with the mind sometimes. What the mind thinks I can do, the body says otherwise. But anyway, we'll have done the best part of 40k round trip by the time we get back to the car. So we'll probably park it up there. From here on, it's just a little wander out to the car. Unless there's something eventful happens, we'll probably pull the pin here. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this trip. We had a ball poking around. A bit of country we don't come to regularly. We spent more time up here on the high plains under snow years ago than we have walking. So if you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button for those that haven't already done so. We appreciate that. And leave a comment. We love the comments, enjoy interacting. Big shout out to everyone for watching. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. See you all next time. Catch ya.